Welcome back to the Little Talk Show. I'm your host, Will Begley, and let's get right into it. Today, I have the honor of interviewing one of America's most influential Gen Z conservative activists, Brilyn Hollyhand. Brilyn has been a force in the political arena for years, launching the Brilyn Hollyhand Show at the young age of 11. Now a college student at Auburn University, he is the best-selling author of One Generation Away, and his highly anticipated book, Make America Talk Again, drops this summer. From co-chairing the RNC's Youth Advisory Council to his current nationwide campus tour, he is on an absolute front lines fighting the liberals' ideologies that have bankrupted other nations. Brilyn Hollyhand, welcome to the show. I'll hand the floor over to you. Anything you would like to kick us off with?
Well, Will, first of all, thank you for letting me come on. I'm a big fan. I watched the show. I'm super excited to be here. This is like the highlight of my week. I've been looking forward to this. It's been on our calendar. We've done Fox and MSNBC and a few other people this week, but this is the one I'm really excited for. So I bet you'll be a little bit nicer than some of our friends over at MSNBC and CNN. And I just appreciate the work you're doing. I definitely understand that it's not easy. I understand that it's not the coolest thing to do as a young person. There's a lot of other video games or outside activities that our friends are doing, but being involved in this fight is super, super, super important. And so I'm just a big fan, and I'm excited to get to hear from you today.
Well, thank you. I'm a big fan of yours. I've been watching you for a while. And yep, I sometimes am guilty of playing Madden 26, and by
Me too.
sometimes, I mean a lot. um, so, Mr. Hollyhand, you're currently traveling the country for your campus tour. The media often paints college campuses as completely hostile to conservative ideologies. From what you're actually seeing on the ground, what is the reality, and what is the most surprising thing you've learned from these students?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. It's a night and day difference than what we're seeing in the media. The media will have you believe that every single young person that's classmates of you and I is a Zohran Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders supporting radical leftist that is out here trying to promote communism and socialism, all across the country, and that's just not the truth. I thought maybe I was in a bubble in the South, and maybe just campuses down here happen to become a little bit more Republican. But as I got out and the last semester doing 10 campuses and then doing some campuses this semester, I've seen the complete opposite of that. Young people, as you know, are hungry for change. They are tired of the corruption in our government on both sides. They are frustrated with the status quo, and they're ready for common sense. I think that's the biggest, desire of our generation. And a lot of people will spend a lot of money trying to research and spend, decades upon decades doing studies on how Donald Trump won the youth vote in 2024. And Will, I think you know this. It's pretty simple. He just spoke to the next generation with common sense. He reached out to us through TikTok, through podcasting, but specifically through campuses. President Trump and I walked into Bryant Denny Stadium, where I'm from in Tuscaloosa, and he tossed out hot dogs in the student section. He walked through fraternity houses in Iowa. He reached out to young people on the campuses. And so if the Democrats want to have any shot at winning us, they have to talk to us first. Thankfully, they haven't listened to that. They must not listen to your show. And thankfully, they've kind of got their head in the sand and they're screaming at us. What we see on campuses is people talking to each other. That's why I did the book Make America Talk Again. So pretty fun.
That's 100% correct. And I'm appreciating the work that you're doing for the youth vote for the Republicans right now. The next question I got is, the GOP has historically struggled to capture the Gen Z vote, and we are seeing them take hits again in the current midterm cycle. If you were going to sit down with Republican leadership today, what is the single biggest tactical shift they need to make to win the youth vote in 2026? And what specific policies should they be leading with to hold the House and the Senate?
That's an awesome, awesome point, Will. I'm glad that you're recognizing this now. A lot of people are going to wait until, say, the week before the election and start screaming and crying that, it's too late to win. But we have the opportunity now to go ahead and do the hard work. And it is hard work. I have two folds to this. The first part is before the primaries. A lot of people in our party are frustrated with me because I'm going out on the campaign trail and supporting candidates in primary races. And they're like, what do you mean you're picking a Republican against a Republican? Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Will, you know just as good as anybody, with Republicans like we have, who needs Democrats? I mean, for the past few months, all we have done is have Republicans fighting Republicans in the Senate, in the House, and in the White House. When we try to get agendas passed, legislation that the American people voted for, it's Republicans, rhinos, who stop it. So in the primaries, I'm making sure that we kind of work some of these kinks out and get good people in office, not just Christian conservatives on a bumper sticker, but people that are going to live that out. That's the first fold of it. And once the primaries are done in the next month or two, we're going to make sure that we go back to campuses. We're registering voters and we're listening to voters. We're not lecturing voters. That's what Kamala did. We're going to listen to voters. We're going to listen to their concerns. And I'll be honest with you, I was just on a campus, UT Martin, this past weekend in Tennessee, and the biggest concern I heard is probably one you've been hearing as well from some of your friends: the economy. Gas prices, housing prices, inflation, those are genuine, valid concerns. And when you speak about that strategic point, and how we're going to kind of reach out to them, it's not doing what the Dems did. The Dems buried their head in the sand and said, what do you mean, inflation? What is inflation? Are you crazy? We don't see anything like inflation. And they acted like a recession wasn't happening. No, no, no. We have to do the opposite. We have to say, yes, there is inflation. This is why prices are higher, and this is our plan to bring them down. If we go into November with President Trump speaking on campuses and saying, here's my plan to make your life easier, to make it easier for you to get a job, start a family, buy a house, pay for gas, that's how we win. We can do it because he has a track record of keeping his promises. Now we just got to go out on the campaign trail, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, and I definitely hear about gas prices every single day. um, so, on September 10th of last year, the conservative movement lost one of its most powerful voices since Ronald Reagan, with the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. Take us back to that day. What was your immediate response um, to the assassination? And as someone who considered him as a mentor, how do you shoulder the immense pressure of stepping into the leadership void that he left behind?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Will. I definitely will say that I see a lot of Charlie and you and what you're doing in this show. When I started my podcast in the fourth grade, nobody would come on, and I knew how hard it was to keep a show like this. And so I was about to have to stop it because I couldn't get anybody to be a guest. And Charlie happened to be coming to speak at a campus near me. I DM'd him. I asked for 10 minutes of his time, and he was so gracious and generous enough to give me 30. We talked for a while and actually became pretty good friends. I thought I'd never hear from him again. It'd be a one and done interview, peace out. And he kept checking in and offering advice and supporting me and having my back. And that started our friendship. And we spoke up until the morning before. So I guess September 9th. I had done a Fox appearance. Charlie must have seen it. He sent me a text of encouragement. And he was like, this point was really good. You should say this more. This was really a unique. And I thought that was so nice. Like, he's Charlie Kirk. He didn't have to do that. Like, he had a million things going on. He's got 2 kids and a wife and an entire student organization. He didn't have to take the time for me, but he did. That was the kind of man he was. On September 10th, I was in English class, finishing up a lecture. I was in my first month of college and heading back to my dorm when I got a text from a friend of ours just saying, start praying for Charlie. And I was like, yeah, I've been praying for Charlie all day. Like, he's speaking in Utah right now. Like, yeah, we've been praying for him. And he was like, no, he's on the way to the hospital. Start praying for him. And so pretty quickly started getting calls and texts from some friends that were on the ground, friends that have been seeing it live, kind of friends in our orbit. And I mean, there's no other word than completely shattered. Everything kind of stopped. And for the next little bit, it was just kind of this what in the world happened kind of thing. It's not like there's a moment you prepare for it. It's not like there's a moment that you've, practiced what to do in that situation. And I was just getting my feeding, being independent. I was without my family. I'm at college. I'm in a brand new environment. And then all of a sudden there's all this going on and your whole world crumbles. And so a few minutes later, as I'm still getting messages, Charlie's still at the hospital at this point. We don't know an update on his condition. My team called me, my publicist reached out and said, hey, Fox is looking for some people to come on and talk about Charlie from a friend perspective. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if I'm up to do it. I'm kind of an emotional mess at the moment. Still have my backpack on. I'm still standing in the foyer of my dorm. And they were like, they want people to share like friendly stories. If I'm not the political Charlie people know, but like talk about him as your friend. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And so as I'm logging on to join the interview, I turn my phone off so I'm not interrupted, and I miss a message announcing that Charlie had passed. And so as the screen turns on and they say, this is a Fox News alert, Charlie Kirk's unfortunately passed away, then I'm there on the screen. And that's kind of how I found out, listening as I'm, in kind of that holding space to come on TV. And pretty quickly they were like, Brilyn, can you remember the man that Charlie Kirk was? And when they said the word was, it just kind of struck me. And if you see in the clip for a moment, I'm kind of frozen. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they killed him. Like, this is insane. And immediately, I don't talk about the Charlie that everybody knows that was, I mean, larger than life and amazing. The Charlie that, registered all these voters and won Trump the White House and all the great accolades that Charlie Kirk did. Those are awesome. The Charlie that I remembered in that moment was my friend. The friend I just told you about that took a chance on me, the friend that I told you that always respected the Sabbath and took time to be with his family and turn his phone off when he had every excuse not to. The man that taught me to share scripture in debates. When you train to go on campuses and debate people, they tell you to bring all these facts and cite this data and go into these studies. And Charlie was like, if you can just remember some scriptures to quote back to them, that's like the most impactful thing you could do. Stuff like that is what I talked about Charlie. At the end of that interview, Will Kane was the host, and he said, so what's next? Like, what does this mean for the movement? Or is everybody going to stop now? Like, everybody's scared. Are y'all going to stop? And I remember kind of freezing. And Will, you probably had some similar thoughts at the time. I guess it was 7 months ago now.
I sure did. Yeah.
Where, yeah, it was like, what are we going to do? Like, what is next? And my first thought was, yeah, I'm terrified. Like, of course I'm going to stop. Like, that's the human instinct. Your flesh is like, yeah, let's stop, right? And I kind of started replaying. And I've been in politics, I guess, for about a decade now. And I was like, it would be a lot easier if I stepped away. If I went back to just being a normal student in class, if I didn't have to worry about security, I didn't have to look over my shoulder, I could put the microphone down and go back and just focus on studying and homework and leave this political mess to our parents. And in that moment, that verse that Charlie always repeated, whether it was over text, whether it was face to face, whether it was in his speeches, you've heard him say it. It was Isaiah 6, here I am, send me. And that thankfully just like ran through my head. And I looked back at the camera and I said, no, I'm not going to stop. And you could tell they were confused. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're going to keep going? And I was like, the coward that killed my friend attempted to shut our generation up. If he did anything, he woke us up. And I said, Will, this weekend I'm supposed to go to South Carolina. We're going to keep the speech in South Carolina. And I mean, my team is freaking out when we get off the interview. They're like, you can't go to South Carolina. You can't give a speech. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And I was like, Charlie lived and died to speak to the next generation. If we abandon the next generation and stop speaking to them because one coward killed him, that coward wins. We can't let that coward win. And so what you're doing with your show, what you're doing speaking out, all of this is carrying on that legacy and the flame of Charlie. And I can tell you, he's smiling out a window in heaven when he looks out at our generation, more faithful and more courageous than ever before. It's pretty cool to see.
You said that beautifully. And
Thank
I
you.
remember when I heard about Charlie's passing, I was sitting on the couch watching Fox News, and I seen Will Kane said Charlie Kirk has passed away. I was very sad, but I decided to start this talk show because of his assassination. You know, somebody had to do something, like you just said. So, many political analysts argued that without Charlie Kirk, the GOP lost its primary bridge to young voters. How does your current One Conversation at a Time tour attempt to rebuild that bridge, and what is your strategy for connecting a demographic that the left heavily dominates?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I listen more than I talk, and I actually take the time to respect each person that comes up. One conversation at a time is not an accident, it's intentional. I named it because that's what we're doing, having one conversation at a time. It's not rushing through people to try to get a viral moment. It's not screaming back at people that scream at me. It's simply talking to them. It's doing what our mentor Charlie did so well. I've been on countless campuses with Charlie when he did debates. I've never can tell you a time he's raised his voice or got flustered or emotional when people threw stuff or said stuff or were as vicious as possible. He respected each person as an American, one conversation at a time. And so when all of this happened, and I was like, where do we go? Like, what's next? That's kind of what kept ringing true of this is what Charlie lived and died doing. I'm speaking on campuses. Will, you know better than anybody, he very easily didn't have to do it. He could have sat in the comfort of a podcast studio and just talked to us and still inspired us through a computer screen. He could still be alive tucking his kids in tonight and with his wife, and he didn't have to go on campuses. He knew the risk. He knew how crazy people were, and that's why he chose to do it. A really cool thing, I talk about this in the first chapter of my book, is when Charlie said that if America stops talking, we go to a civil war. The comparison that he made was that if marriages stop talking, they go to divorce. As in, if a country stops talking, there's like a national divorce, aka a civil war. I can't think of a time that we've been closer to that moment than after his assassination. And so, in the days following, in the chaos and everything that was after September 10th, I remember just being like, okay, is this it? Like, are we going to a civil war now? Is that what next? And I was like, how do we prevent that? What would Charlie have said to do? And he would have said to start talking. And so that's what started the tour. I'll be honest, it wasn't easy. I will not sugarcoat it to you, Will. It was very fun. I, enjoyed talking to every single person we've gotten to, but the constant stream of threats is not necessarily an easy thing to handle. And I think I've got some fairly thick skin. The attacks on my family, on my friends, on my classmates, on classes that I sit in, on my walk to class, on my dorm room, on my car, like hotels. People are actually insane, as we know from the assassination. But it's different, when you start to like see them attack you. Even this weekend, UT Martin, we were doing an event there in Tennessee, and just protesters are one thing. People that legitimately try to completely silence you by killing you is insane. And so that very easily could have ended the tour months ago. It's not. I'll just give you a spoiler alert. It's not going to. And we're going to keep speaking because that's what Charlie would have done.
Charlie always spoke out, no matter if it was popular or unpopular. um, so your upcoming book, Make America Talk Again, releases this July and tackles our culture of outrage and silence. How do conservatives fight aggressively for their values without getting dragged into the unproductive screaming matches that dominate social media?
And there's so many of those screaming matches, aren't there? Yeah, I think that's the big problem, and that's actually what I'm really trying to address here. The idea for the book actually came right around the time of Trump's assassination attempt. It was probably a few days before. It was the summer of 2024. We were getting ready for our convention in Milwaukee, and a big roundtable of leaders at the RNC brought in some youth council members to get advice on the convention. And they were going to have themes for each night. They were going to have a Make America Wealthy Again, Make America Safe Again, Make America Powerful Again. And it got to my turn, and I said, what if we make America talk again? And the room was like dead silence. And it started to get a few chuckles. And I was like, what? And they were like, what does that even mean? Make America talk again? And like, we talk enough, don't we? And as I'll explain on the very first page of the book, no, actually, that's the problem. We know how to scream, we know how to rant, will we even know how to assassinate, but we don't know how to talk. We've gotten to a point in our country where we've been raised to believe that politics and faith are taboo. We think that we can't talk about politics or faith in the living room or in the classroom or at church or in our neighborhood. Therefore, when one of us gets frustrated about politics or faith, what do? We dye our hair blue, we get a nose ring, we grab a bullhorn, we shut down a campus, or worse, we result in assassination. People can't look at each other eye to eye and say, here's what I disagree with you on, let's find common ground. And so every single time, here's the little secret for you, Will, but I've done a debate since Charlie's assassination. The first thing I try to do with every single person that comes up is find a point of common ground. It might be their name is cool. It might be I like the shirt or hat they're wearing. It might be they mentioned something. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a cool, you know, baseball team, whatever it might be, some point of common ground. So we're viewing each other as humans as opposed to enemies and foes. And I think that's what the point of the book's trying to do. I've debated, I've gone to campuses, and I want more people to do it. I don't want to be the only one out here. So it's a how-to guide to hand to a student and say, this is how you talk to each other. It sounds super simple. Apparently, common sense, as you know, Will, has been thrown out the window. And so we need a little bit more of it back. And that's what we're trying to do with the book.
Yep. It's important that we have dialogue again because we've seen what happens when we don't have dialogue. That kind of happened in 1860. We might not need to go back to that year. Um, so you co-chaired the RNC's Youth Advisory Council and have directly advised President Trump on youth outreach, including the necessity of expanding to platforms like TikTok. Looking ahead to November, are Republican candidates finally utilizing these platforms effectively, or are they still playing catch up to the Democrats?
I would say we're beating the Democrats and dominating on every social media platform, but that doesn't mean the work's done. I think a lot of people in the party right now that are still in working in some of those positions would say, "Oh, we've got a TikTok account. Oh, we go on a podcast from time to time, and we've got people out on campuses. So let's take the foot off the gas." My response is no. Let's not just dominate. Let's completely annihilate our opposition and make sure that we control, the entire For You page, that we have constant information going out, not only fighting the left, but, sharing our own thing. The reason that specifically, say, a TikTok was something that I pitched to Trump one of the first times I met him was because it can be used as a weapon and a tool. And you could tell he kind of perked up and he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, it can be a weapon to attack our enemy and respond to, say, fake claims that they might make. But it can also be a tool to share ideas, a tool to share something like no tax on tips with young people that maybe are working in, say, a fast food job like a young person could be. And they see it on their For You page and like, oh, cool, this is like something I've never heard before because we don't watch TV. Another one of those ideas is one you've probably seen as well. The president was complaining one time that a lot of young people weren't watching his rallies. And I said, well, Mr. President, with all due respect, young people can barely afford rent. We're not paying for a cable subscription on top of that. And you could tell he's like, what is this kid talking about? And it's like, nobody's watching your rallies because nobody's watching Fox News. Like we're not paying that extra bill. We could barely afford to fill up our gas tank. And they were like, what's your point? Like, get to it. And I was like, sir, what I'm trying to say is you need to go somewhere free. You need to stream your rallies. And so they partnered with Twitch and started streaming some of Trump's rallies where video games are streamed. They started putting some on YouTube to make it easier. And I'll tell you, Will, I had friends come up to me, like, say, the next day in the lunchroom, and they're like, hey, I saw your boy Trump last night speaking about this and this in Pennsylvania. That's pretty cool. I didn't know he was even running. Like, people that didn't pay attention to politics happen to log on to watch a favorite video game streamer, and there's Trump at the top of the screen. So those strategies worked, but we can't stop there. My recommendation to the president is to go on a campus tour, to go take his message to at least 10 campuses across the country, pack basketball arenas, and say, here's my promises to you if you reelect our majority in November. I think that's how he continues to win. He's got accomplishments. He can put the receipts on the screen and say, here's what I promised you when you voted for me in 2024. And here's a check mark next to every single one that I've accomplished. No, here's a new list. If you elect me again, I'll put check marks next to it. That's how we win. That's how we make sure that the Gen Z majority supporting the GOP isn't a one-time, fluke. It's a long-term big tent revival. That's what Reagan meant. When Reagan said that freedom is one generation away from extinction, he didn't mean that our young Americans in this country voted for the GOP one singular time. It means decades upon decades of generational support. And Trump has a chance to do that. We got to be wise about it, though.
You're 100% right. We must annihilate the Democrats on all social media platforms because
Yeah,
that's where most people are getting their news from these days. You know,
you're right.
and also, I love Ronald Reagan and I love all of his quotes, especially how he said one time, well, I hope all of you guys are Republicans. That was him in like a hospital room after he got shot. So I found that quote pretty funny. Um, so when you are talking to college students today, what is the number one issue that's driving them to the right or to the left? Is it the cultural battle, or is it the harsh economic reality of trying to survive and pay rent under the current administration?
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest frustration is the economy. It's this idea of the American dream that we've been promised for, decades since our childhood. That when you grow up, if you work hard enough, you can earn it. That's what America is, right? For 250 years. Unfortunately, just not because of any particular political party, just the way society is, your job's either be taken by somebody that comes in overseas, it's been taken by a robot, or it's just not there because there's not enough money for it. Which means you can't buy that first home, which means you can't start that family, which means we can't have big nuclear families in this country and have more support because there's just not space for it in the economy, and that's a frustrating point. There is room there. I don't want to be all doom and gloom. We definitely can bring down housing prices if the Fed wakes up and smells the roses. We definitely can bring down gas prices as this conflict in Iran finishes. And we definitely can make sure the job market is fair. Instead of providing amnesty to illegals, we kick them out and look at how many jobs are going to become open for young people. So there's definitely responses to these. It's just making sure that we have the right kind of Republicans in office instead of rhinos to make sure that they, I don't know, actually do the will of the American people. What a crazy concept. Will politicians working for their constituents? Hopefully we see it.
Yeah, my current Congressman Hal Rogers is always working for the people of Eastern
Good.
Kentucky. So being a young Republican puts a massive target on your back to the point where you're frequently requiring security escorts on campus. What is your advice to conservative college freshmen who are terrified of being canceled, doxxed, or graded down for speaking their mind?
Yeah, I'll tell you the saddest thing that I see when I speak on campuses are the friends that come and whisper in the meet and greets. I'm like, what are we whispering about? And they're trying to quietly tell me their name or where they're from or what they do. And I'm like, why are we whispering this? Like, is it confidential? And they're like, I don't want people to know I'm here. And I'm like, what? And they're like, I'm afraid that I'm going to get kicked out of my fraternity, my sorority, my class, my organization, my club, not get a job one day because I came to an event, because I publicly said or affiliated that I was a Republican or with Republicans. And that's heartbreaking. I, don't think I've been on a campus this semester or last semester that didn't require a security presence because people were throwing things or trying to sneak in or, do an attack on the route there. There's always something. That's not what America's supposed to be. Our higher education, places of university is supposed to be this beacon of free discourse. This is the entire point. And instead, we have students that are terrified and speakers who try to come speak to those students, and they get attacked in the process. My advice is really simple. 1 Timothy 4:12 says, "Don't let anybody look down on you because you were young, but set an example for the believers in speech and love and conduct and faith and in purity." That's the message that got me interested in politics, and that still rings true today. It means that every single person, regardless of your age, has a voice. The story of First Timothy is Paul handing the beacon to Timothy and saying, "Run with it." And Paul was later executed. And if Timothy didn't take that beacon and run with it, we wouldn't know the truth of the gospel today. We have that opportunity. The beacon's being passed to us, and we can run with it, or we can sit here and say it's too scary. The verse I shared earlier, Isaiah 6:1, here I am, send me. That's the story of Isaiah. When Isaiah walked into a temple one night and heard the voice of the Lord and this bright batch of angels come in, he was probably confused. Isaiah wasn't some old wise Pharisee, didn't have a long beard or a bunch of scrolls or any big white cloak. He was just a young guy like us. And God said, as the story goes, "Whom shall I send?" And Will, if I was Isaiah, I probably would have been looking around like, surely God's not talking to me. Like, there's some big old wise Pharisee behind me and I got in the way and I'm sorry, God. Like, surely he's not talking to me, right? Isaiah didn't say that. Isaiah didn't say, "I'll go if you make it easy." He didn't say, "I'll go if you make it comfortable." He didn't say, "I'll go if you make sure I don't lose any friends or any followers." He didn't say, "I'll go if you make sure all my buddies sit beside me at lunch tomorrow." He said, "Here I am, send me." No strings attached, no preconditions. That's what we're called to do every single day. It's not going to get easier. It's actually going to get harder. But if you step up in faith now and boldly and courageously fight for what's right in this country, fight for the morals and values not only founded our country, but were commanded through Christ, we have the opportunity to do something bigger than ourselves. And I think that's what's important here, Will.
It's very important that we speak our mind, speak the truth, and be faithful. Um, so you started the Truth Gazette at just 11 years old because you saw a gap in political coverage. Today, public trust in mainstream media is at an all-time low. Do you believe the era of legacy media is officially over, and what is the future of independent journalism?
That's a really good point. I think you're the future, Will. I think this right here, this conversation, this podcast, this platform is the future of independent journalism. It's young people with a microphone speaking out. It's not some overpaid consultant propped up under the guise of a pundit. in a plushy Washington D.C. studio telling you, what you should think, who you should support, what you should believe. It's not that. Those days are over. There's such a lack of trust in media, specifically since COVID, when we were told not to believe our lying eyes, and we were, told to just put our hands out and immediately trust any information that the media told us, regardless of how fake it was. I think when President Trump started calling the media the enemy of the people and labeled them as fake news, everybody immediately was crying, and all these crocodile tears were being screamed, and people were really upset. But I think it's been really clear, as you know, Will, that they are the enemy of the people that make a business off of fear mongering and deceiving, specifically the next generation, is the enemy of the people. And so this right here is how you respond to that. Sharing information through your own platform and not going through legacy media is the coolest way. I very easily could go pursue a career in that field, and I'm not. I'm doing my show that I've done for the last decade since the fourth grade because I really enjoy the freedom of it. I can pray on my show. I can share scripture on my show. I can talk about my faith boldly on the show. And it's authentic. People know I'm not reading off of a script or a teleprompter. I'm in the corner of my college dorm room just talking to people. And I think that's what we need more of, more authenticity, more relatability, and less scripted punditry.
Yes, and I also love the freedom of that I can talk about the issues, and give
Absolutely.
not something that's going to panic the people, but something that's going to, give them the truth about it, the fact about it. So you are only 19 years old, yet you are already shaping national GOP strategies. What is the ultimate end goal for Brilyn Hollyhand? Where do you see yourself in the conservative movement over the next 10 years?
Great question. So, a lot of people really love to point towards political office, and we absolutely need people in political office in this country, specifically young Christian conservatives. At this time, I just don't feel like that's what I'm called to do. If the Lord opens that door, I'm not saying I'm not going to go through it, but I'm not going to go in something that I don't necessarily feel called to do out of ego or pride or selfish desires. Will, I love what I'm doing right now. I love going to campuses. I love debating. I love sitting on a podcast and talking to people like you. I love writing and getting to do books every 2 years right now. It's so fun, and it's been really cool to get to do a lot of things at once. I'll tell you a story. Last week, I went to our state house in Montgomery and met with a buddy of mine over lunch who is a state rep. And I sat there for a few hours and kind of watched the debates and watched what was going on. And when I pulled him aside on the way to lunch, I was like, "Hey, tell me what you've done today. Like, give me a walkthrough on what you've done." And he was like, "We've debated the same bill since 6 a.m. this morning. We'll go till, close to midnight. We won't pass it. Tomorrow we'll try again with a different bill." It's what we do all day. That's good. We need people there. We need people in the state house fighting that fight. In that day, I had been to 3 states. I was back in my third state, and I was going back that night to take an exam at class. I was able to go and speak at 3 different places, still make it back and help lobby for piece of legislation, and then that night still be back in class and do stuff like that. I feel like I can do a lot of different things right now. It does feel like I'm spinning plates or juggling a bunch, but it's fun and it keeps me going and active. Very little sleep involved in it, Will, but I like this, and so I'm content where I am. I'm really happy with the doors that the Lord has opened, and we'll see where He takes us. I'm fully trusting in that. I can certainly tell you that when I was in your shoes, I didn't think that I would still be here doing this. I thought it was a hobby, and thankfully, the Lord is good and continued this. And when I started my show, I had 7 subscribers for the first year. So you're already beating me, which means that you're going to have a way bigger career than I do, Will. So I'm excited to just be a fan of yours for a while.
Well, thank you. And um, I'll, if you run for any public office, you already have my support.
Thank you. I
um,
appreciate it, Will.
so, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, the big thing I would just say to you and your audience is don't give up. Keep going. It's not easy. I know it takes a lot of work to put on a show like this. I know it takes a lot of work to put yourself out there, to share your faith, to share your views. It's not the cool thing to do. It's not the easy thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. You're fighting for something bigger than yourself. So don't let anybody discourage. Don't let anybody, tear you down. You're going to get hate. You're going to get pushback. You're going to need thick skin. But what you're doing is awesome. I'm a fan. I'm going to keep watching the show, and I encourage everybody to subscribe to the Will Talk Show because I just think it's such a cool platform to hear directly from the next generation, not through any consultants or studies or polls. you're right here talking to the next generation on this podcast live. And I can't think of anything cooler than that. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do over the next 10 years and see how you affect the Republican Party. Thank you again for coming on to the Will Talk Show.
Thank you, Will.
Now today we learned that we must be bold in our faith and for what we believe in. And in the Bible it says in Proverbs 28, 1 through 2, King James Version, the wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. For the transgression of a land many are the princes thereof. But by a man of understanding and knowledge, the state thereof shall be prolonged. Stay bold in your beliefs, stay bold in yourself. Like, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification bell to stay up to speed. I'll see you next time on the Will Talk Show. Thank you, God bless, and Godspeed to all of you.